Welcome to Coding with AI, where we learn to create entire applications using AI. My name is Kuma with AIGPTcon.com, and today, in this first part of our series, we are going to learn how to create a special financial Telegram bot using nothing but ChatGPT. So, before we get started, let me give you a quick overview of AIGPTcon.com. The goal of AIGPTcon is to teach people how to create entire application by having ChatGPT or other AI write every single line of code. So you can check out our website. In our first tutorial, we learned how to build a movie recommendation app using ChatGPT, and you can follow the steps. I also included the link to my entire chat session with ChatGPT, unedited, so you can go through, and learn a few tips and tricks and find out how we are able to build, the app from start to finish using nothing, but ChatGPT. On our website, we also have an app request section where you can post your ideas, about apps you want to build using AI, and we will create a tutorial, for them. So this is one of the requests we receive from one of our users, which is to create a Telegram bot that will work with the XLM blockchain. So I'm not familiar, with SLM, and I have no information about it, but that's the goal, right? We're gonna learn how we can leverage and use ChatGPT, right, to create, our application. All right, so let me just go ahead and copy request here. All right, and now let's go to our chat session with ChatGPT. So I do have a Plus subscription with OpenAI. So I use, Chat GPT-4, the model GPT-4. You can use, 3.5, for these as well, which is the free version. But for something like this, where you might require a lot of context, it might be better to use, GPT-4 because it is absolutely going to save you a ton of time. So I'm going to select GPT-4, and I do have a few plugins I use. I usually use, Scraper, Web Request, and the Link Reader. So these are basically plugins that enable ChatGPT to access the internet and retrieve, data from the internet. So the reason I use these plugins is because I'm not sure if you're aware, but ChatGPT currently has a cutoff date of September 2021. So if there is any new information following September 2021, it's not going to have access to that information. So the plugins come in handy, right? So you can have ChatGPT look at the internet and retrieve, information. But this is also really helpful, in case there is some APIs or documentation that you might not be familiar with, or that ChatGPT in its current state is not familiar with, right? So you can use a plugin, and have it retrieve information about documentation, online. For these tutorials, we use Replit. Replit makes it a lot easier to create applications and have them ready, to be deployed in a production environment. So really easy and simple to use. They have a free version you can use. So I usually put, all my code on Replit. So you'll find the movie recommendations we created in our first tutorial. You'll find that on Replit, so you can copy it, play around with it, and see the entire code. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So again, we're gonna use, GPT-4. So usually in these, before you get started, whether you're coding, the traditional way or working with AI, you want to make sure you understand the project requirements, but you also want to make sure ChatGPT also understands, the project requirements. So let me go ahead. Kuma. So let's start a new project, and I'm just gonna copy paste our information from the forum, and I'm gonna ask ChatGPT, do you understand the requirements. Okay. Again, so this is really important, right? Because not only do you want to make sure you understand the requirements, but you also want to make sure ChatGPT understands, the requirements. So the reason for this is that it'll provide you with what it can do and what it cannot do. So you get information about its capabilities, as well as its limits, right? So it'll help you plan, and figure out, how to go about creating the app. So let's read, through to make sure you understand what we're asking of it, right? So it says, yes, I understand the requirements. So we want a Telegram bot that will monitor the Stellar blockchain for purchases for a specific asset. So when there are events, that occur, we want the bot to post a message, right, in a Telegram group. So, for example, how much, XLM, or, how much of that asset was purchased, like how much was received in return, the price of the asset, at the time of purchase, right, and how much, the buyer has in their wallet, right, and the current market cap of the asset. So, and the bot, will continuously monitor, the Stellar blockchain and provide up-to-date information about the transaction. So, and this is part is really important now because ChatGPT is now telling us, okay, to implement this, right, we need the following, right? Okay, we need to interact with the Stellar blockchain. We need, to create a bot, an API for the bot to create a Telegram group, and we need to find a way to calculate, the current market cap of the asset, a way to determine the buyer's position. So, and of course, there's, the usual disclaimer about being a bot, and all that. But so at least, now we know, okay, ChatGPT understands what we are trying to do, okay, and so we're gonna go move forward with that. So, and as I mentioned before, right, I usually for all these tutorials we're gonna use Replit. So let me just ask ChatGPT if it is familiar with Replit, right? So let me type that. Are you familiar with Replit? So let's see its response. Okay, yes, it is familiar with Replit. So ChatGPT says it's an online code editor that supports multiple programming languages and allows you to run code in the cloud. So, okay. So Replit supports a variety of languages, including Python, JavaScript, Node.js, and many others. So for the project you described, we could use either Python or JavaScript, as both have libraries, for interacting with the Stellar blockchain and the Telegram bot API. Please let me know which language you'll prefer to use, or if you have any other specific requirements. So for this, I think we're gonna go ahead and use Python. So let's just tell ChatGPT we use Python. Okay, and let it know. Okay, we're gonna use great. Okay, Python is a great choice. It has a rich ecosystem. So okay, now ChatGPT is telling us, some of the things, we need to set up to basically create our project. So okay, it's telling us, okay, we need certain libraries, like the Stellar SDK for the blockchain. We need the Python Telegram bot API, and some imports, that we have to add. So it says here's a high level overview of how the bot, might work. So the bot starts and initializes the Stellar SDK and the Telegram API bot API. The bot begins monitoring the Stellar blockchain for transactions involving specified assets. When a transaction is detected, the bot, gathers the necessary information, like the amount of the asset, the price, and so on. And the bot, formats this information into a message, and then the bot, sends a message to the Telegram group and just repeats, the second, step here, which is to monitor. Again, so as I say, right, I'm not familiar with the Stellar, blockchain. I don't know anything about it, right? But this is what AI, can be used for, right? So regardless of how limited your knowledge is about a topic, you can use an AI like ChatGPT to help you create, what you need, right? So even though I'm not familiar with it, when I have any questions, I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT, and it's gonna walk me through the steps. So now it's asking us, before we start writing the code, we need to clarify a few things. How do we determine the buyer's position on the holders list? How do we calculate the current market cap of the asset? How frequently should the buyer, check the seller blockchain, for a new transaction? Could you provide, more details, on this? So again, I don't know anything about the seller, blockchain, so I'm just gonna let ChatGPT make a few assumptions, so I'm just gonna tell it, I'll let you make a few assumptions and proceed with the way you believe is best. So basically, I'm giving ChatGPT control, of making assumptions, so we can get started. And if I have questions, or I think, okay, we need to change a few things, then I'll let ChatGPT know. So right now, ChatGPT is giving us, an example of code, that we can get started with, right? So a sample code, that we can get started with. So while it's doing all that, let's go ahead in our Replit, and we can start creating our project. But again, since I've already done this, I know how to do that. But just in case, right, some of our viewers are not familiar with Replit, right? We can ask ChatGPT how we can do that. So let's just have it, finish the code it is writing, and okay, so let's ask it, do we create a new project on Replit? So here's a few steps. Go to Replit and log in into your account. Once you log in, you'll see a plus Replit button on the top right of the page. A dialog box is going to show up. So if you're using Python for the project, select Python. You can give your Replit a name. So this is optional, and then click, create Replit, right? So REPL. So you'll be taken to the coding, environment, and you can run your code by clicking run. So you can save your code at any time by clicking version control. So remember to replace the placeholders in the code with the actual values before running it. Also, you need to install the required Python libraries, Stellar, SDK, Python Telegram bot, by adding them to the .replit file in your repo. So the .replit file should look something, like this. Okay, so this tells, Replit to install these packages before running your code. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and create our project. So as ChatGPT said, we're gonna select, Python, since we're gonna use Python. So I'm just gonna call this, Telegram bot. Okay, I'm gonna make the repository private, public. Sorry. So you guys can access it, and see the code and play around with this, right? So, but if you don't want, you didn't want people to have access, to your code and all that, you can definitely set it to private. But yeah, I'm gonna keep it at public. Okay, and we're gonna create the REPL. All right, just give it a minute to load. Okay, and let's follow the instructions ChatGPT has given us. So we need these packages, right? So it's telling us, we need to add these to the .replit file in your REPL. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna locate the .repl file. Okay, right here. So I think, what I'm gonna do is, okay, I'm just gonna add a new line here. I'm just gonna Control V. I'm just gonna paste what ChatGPT said. I mean the requirements, right? That ChatGPT told us to install, basically. Okay. I think okay, maybe you have a couple of things that are duplicates here, but that's okay. We can fix all those later on, with ChatGPT. We'll just work with the assumptions that we're newbies, we're trying to learn, and we're gonna rely on ChatGPT to do a lot of the work. So let's go back to the initial sample code that ChatGPT provided us with, right? So So okay, let's read here. So please note that this is a simplified version. It doesn't include, all error handling and edge cases you'll want to consider in a production bot. You'll need to replace your Telegram token, your Telegram chat ID, your Stellar asset code, and your Stellar issuer account ID with your actual values. All right, so these are some of the information we need to fill in because based on what ChatGPT is telling us. So I'm just gonna copy this and I'm gonna go paste it in our main.py. So this is where the main code, is gonna be. So if you remember, right, above, up here, ChatGPT told us, about how we can, where is it right here? How we can, run our code, and everything. So let me just go ahead and I'll paste this here. Okay. Now we need, some of these, right? Some of the things ChatGPT told us, right? That we need. So we need, the Telegram token. We need the Stellar asset code. We need the Stellar issuer account ID. We need the Telegram chat ID, right? So let's go ahead and ask ChatGPT how we can get, these, information, right? Okay. So we're gonna start, with the bot. We need your Telegram token. Okay. Let me ask it. So I'm just gonna ask, for these two Telegram token and since we're dealing with Telegram, right? We want to get. Let's start with the Telegram piece. Okay. Let's get information about what we need for the Telegram piece, and then we'll get information about what we need, for the Stellar piece. So, all right, let me ask ChatGPT, how can I get the Telegram bot ID and what else do we need? And the Telegram, the Telegram token and the Telegram chat ID. So let me ask that, the Telegram token and chat ID. So let's wait for ChatGPT to give us its response. So it's telling us to get the Telegram token and chat ID, you need to create a new bot and add it to a group. So here are the steps. So open the Telegram app and search, bot father bot, and then start a chat with the bot father and send the command, new bot. Follow the prompts given to you, and the username must be unique, right? So and end with bot. So okay, like my unique bot. Okay. So after you created a bot father will give you a token. So this is your Telegram token. You'll use it to send requests to the Telegram bot API. So make sure to keep it secret. Okay. And get the chat ID. So okay, so this is the second piece. Basically we want to create, a Telegram group where, the chat, where the bot, can send information, right? So let's say if you create a Telegram group, people will join that group and the bot in that group will send, that financial data inside that group, basically. All right, so you want to add, a new group, okay? And then, okay, so I'm reading here, got it, okay. All right, so let's get started, so I'm gonna launch Telegram, the Telegram app, on my computer. So let me go ahead and launch the app. So I use a program called BlueStacks. BlueStacks is like an emulator, right? It's kind of like an Android, emulator or a smartphone emulator you can use. So instead of using my phone and trying to record stuff on my phone, I just downloaded this emulator. So basically, you can have this environment on your PC. Basically, I'll get started. All right. So here we go. So let me launch Telegram. All right. So let me follow the instructions we have here. So the first thing is ChatGPT is telling us we have to search the Telegram app for Batfather. Okay, let's search for. Well, type of. Okay, I think this is it. So since it's verified, so Pathfinder. Okay, and we're gonna click, start, and we're gonna type new bat. Okay, so I guess that's a command. I had my cap locks on. Okay, all right, a new bat. How are we going to call it? Please choose a name for your bat. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna call it XLM. Okay, XLM Telegram bot. Let me go ahead and send. Good. Now let's choose a username for your bot. You must end in bot. Okay. Oh, it's not saying. Okay. Okay. So I guess this is the token that we needed, right? So I think we got it right here. So let me go ahead and I think I can copy this. I'm guessing. Okay. I'll copy this. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead in my Replit environment. So I'll save, I'll create a new file so I can save, some of this information, So I'm just gonna call in info.txt for now. So this is our token, right? So this is the Telegram token. So for the bot we created, okay, Telegram token for the bot, okay. And I think, at this stage, I can go ahead and replace that with the actual value right here. Okay, but I also saved it, And so, as you know, ChatGPT mentioned, we need to make sure this is secret, right? So you don't want to share this, with anyone else. Of course, I'm going to change mine and delete that later after the tutorial, right? But you don't want to share, any of your tokens, with people, right? Otherwise, they can access your code, and control your bot and whatnot, right? So you want this to remain, private. So we have, our token. So let me go back here. Now that we have our Telegram, token for our chat bot. So the next step is we're gonna need to get the Telegram chat ID. So now let's see how we can get that ID, okay? So let's follow the instructions ChatGPT has given us, okay? So add the bot to a group. So you can do this by searching for the bot's username in the search bar, click on it, and then clicking add to group. Got it? So once the bot is in a group, send a message in the group. So open a new tab in your browser and navigate to this URL. So bot get update. So we have to replace, your bot token with the actual token that we got. So okay, and then look for the message object in the response. Inside this object, there should be a chat object in that. So an ID field. This is your chat ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to Telegram, and we're gonna create a new group since I don't have a Telegram group right now. So let me click here and new group. So I'm not gonna add anyone right now to the group. So what should we call the group? So XLM group, I guess. Okay. And we're gonna create the group. All right, that's it. Okay. So now we're gonna add, as ChatGPT said here. So we're gonna add members to the group, right? So we're gonna add the bot to the group. So add members. So let's look for our bot. So I think, what do we call it? We call it XLM Telegram bot, I believe. All right, here. So this is what it is. So we're just gonna click on this, and we're gonna add. So are you sure? Yes, we want to add our bot, to the group. Okay, so we got it there. So our next step is, you want to send a message in the group. Okay, let's do that. We're gonna send a message in the group. Okay, and then we're gonna navigate to this URL, and we will replace, your bot token with the actual, this token number basically. So Once we do that, then we will get, the actual, we'll get the Telegram chat ID. All right. So let's go ahead and navigate to this URL here. Okay. So here's all the information we're getting back. So update ID. So I don't know what the chat ID is. I see a lot of IDs, right? So, oh, okay, maybe this is it, right? So this is it right here. Okay. So yeah, because we named our group, XLM group, right? So I'm thinking, this is the ID, but let's check with ChatGPT just to be sure. Look for the message object in response. Inside this object, there should be a chat object. Inside that, an ID field. This is your chat ID, okay? So yeah, it says message, an ID field. Okay, so I'm thinking, yep, so this is our ID. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna copy this. All right, so I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna add the chat ID right here. Okay, you following so far? All right. So since we have, the information we needed about our Telegram group, right? So we now have that information. Now we need to get the Stellar asset code and the Stellar issuer account ID. Again, I have no idea what, these things are, right? So let's ask, ChatGPT, are the Stellar asset code and issuer account. I think it's the issuer account ID. Yep, issuer account ID. For me, this makes sense. ChatGPT's explanation suits me. Okay, I understand it, right? But if you don't, here's the thing. Just ask. You just have to ask ChatGPT to provide you with more explanation, more clarification, or again, let's just test it, right? Explain it to me like I'm 5. So let's try that. So it's gonna simplify, right? Okay. So basically, to get information about an asset, on the Stellar network, we need, the asset code and we need the issuer account ID, right? That makes sense to me. Again, if it doesn't make sense to you, if you're still confused, no problem. Just keep asking ChatGPT, right? Ask it, okay, can you expand? Can you explain it a little bit more? Can you give me more examples, right? So just keep asking, ChatGPT until you understand, what it is saying. So, but to me, it makes sense, so far. So let's proceed. Again, I don't know anything about the Stellar network. I'm not familiar with it, the Stellar blockchain. So I'll ask ChatGPT, right? If he has an example of assets, right? And we can use, can you give me an example of assets we can use for, I cannot type, for our code. So, since, we set up our template, right? Our code template, you have an asset code or issuer account ID. So this is how you can get ChatGPT, right, to update the code, you already have, right? Because even though, okay, you can have ChatGPT fix, bugs in your code, but one way you can get it to create entire applications is you just go to the code it has already generated, you just copy it, and then you're gonna paste that code, right, in your response and ask a question, right? So before I paste my code, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to replace the Stellar account, the Stellar asset code and the Stellar issuer account ID with example we can use, to make our code work. Okay. So please replace the asset code and the issuer account ID with examples we can use in the code below. All right, so let me paste, the code I just copied, and we're gonna send it. We'll let ChatGPT do its work. So, okay, so ChatGPT gave us an example called Mobi. All right, And I guess this is the asset code OBI, and this right here is the issuer. Uh, Sorry, this right here is the issuer. Okay, so ChatGPT right now is updating, our code, the code. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I'll paste this here. All right. Okay, so that was kind of like the first step we were trying to get over, right? Because for our code, we needed, to get our Telegram bot token. We needed, the chat ID for the group, where the Telegram bot, was going to send information, right, about the transactions. And we needed, the asset code, and we also needed the issuer account ID. So we got all that information thanks to ChatGPT. So now let's see if we can test, the code, right? Just to see if we get something, functional, right? Just to get started, right? Let's see if we can get some of that information. Okay. So I'm just gonna go, and again, we'll learn as we go along, right? Even if you don't understand, everything the code is doing, because obviously we have a few placeholders here, and they're not gonna work, obviously, right? But let's just run our code based on what ChatGPT said. We just click run, and we will see what we get, right? Okay. So next, building next environment problem, reading, the directly file, Okay. So if you remember, this is something I noticed, earlier, right? Where the language, uh, so when ChatGPT asked me to update, the code, I saw the language, twice, right? So this is kind of the error we're getting on, say, line 8. Key language and key language have already been, defined, right? Okay, so we do not want that. So let's go back to our directly file, and so yeah, we have the language, twice here. So if you notice, right? So we're gonna go ahead. Let's remove one of them. Okay. So we're gonna remove, the first one. So let's try again and see what we're gonna get. Okay, so no module named Stellar SDK. So now I'm thinking it's possible it could be, because of where we put, our packages, again, we don't know, but let's just ask, ChatGPT, right? That this is kind of the error we're getting, and see if it can help us, resolve this error, right? Because one of the things ChatGPT is really good at is debugging your code, right? Helping you resolve, errors and problems you encounter along the way. So if you get errors, no need to panic. Just, let ChatGPT know, okay, I'm getting this, how can we fix it? I'm getting the error below. Okay, so let's see what it's gonna do. Okay, it's because the server module is not installed. So how you do it? Okay, so click on the packages tab. It looks like a box on the left of the screen. In the search bar that appears, type stellar underscore SDK and press enter. Click on the stellar underscore SDK package in the search result. Click on the plus button to add the package. So Replit will automatically install the package and add it to a requirements.txt file in your REPL. This file lists all the Python packages, that your REPL needs to run. You'll need to do the same for the Python Telegram bot package. Okay, so once you've added these packages, try running the code again. All right, so let's follow these instructions. So it says to go to packages tab. It looks like a box on the left side of the screen. So let's look for that. Right here. Okay, so we see packages, right? So let's go ahead and click on that. So now we're gonna search for the packages. So the first one is, stellar underscore SDK. Okay. So I'm thinking this is the package, but let's just make sure ChatGPT says, underscore, right? So let me, I'm thinking, it made a mistake. And again, this is going to happen sometimes, right? Because AI is not perfect. It is going to make mistakes, sometimes, right? Because it is supposed to be stellar dash SDK. I am guessing, right? But it said stellar underscore SDK. So let's just let it know. Just I'm just gonna say, is it stellar underscore SDK or stellar dash SDK? Let's see. Is stellar dash SDK now? Okay. However, when you import it in the Python, code, you should use stellar underscore SDK. Okay, so you did not make a mistake at all, right? I was the one that was a little bit confused because see, so when you import a package, right, it is stellar underscore, SDK, right? But when you're looking for the package, it is stellar dash SDK. So that's and this is one of the other things that is good because just a quick sidebar, right? When you're learning coding with AI, you also learn a lot, right? So whether you're new to coding in general or whether you're a seasoned developer, you are gonna learn a lot of things. So this is a really good upside of that. Okay, so we're gonna install this package, and the next one that we need to install is the Python Telegram group that we have here because again we it wasn't this one wasn't working either, so I'm just gonna copy it. All right, and I'm gonna look for that one next as ChatGPT instructed us, and I am gonna install it. So let's install that. That is done. Good. Never mind. Let's go ahead and run our code again, right? Let's see. Okay, we are still getting the same error. So let's tell so it means the package is not getting installed, for some reason. So let me copy this, but we do have it here. So let's just ask ChatGPT why. Okay, right. So let me ask it. We are still getting the same error. What do you advise? So let's see. It's taking a minute. I apologize for the confusion. The package name is import telegram, not Python telegram underscore bat. So the package name, but importing it. Okay, so it's telling us that it made a mistake that we were not supposed to. Okay, so it's telling okay, this is what we're supposed to import. Okay, let's go ahead and try it, and let's see if we get the desired result. Let's try it. All right. So looks like we're getting past all the errors. The code is running. We're not getting any errors, right? So let's see if we can get some functionality, from ChatGPT. All right. Okay. So our next step, we're gonna see if we can get just a transaction, right? From the seller blockchain, right? So we're gonna see if the bot. Uh, let's ask, can you update the code so the bot can send the latest transaction from the Mabi from the asset code Mabi. Can you update the code for the bot to send the latest transaction for Mabi? So this is just to test the functionality, just to make sure it is working, and then we can go into depth later. So ChatGPT is updating our code based on what we had previously, and it's gonna try and fulfill that requirement. Again, obviously the goal is to continuously monitor the chain, and then provide information about the specific asset. But right now we just want to make sure, we just want to see, right, if the script actually works, right? So we're just gonna copy what ChatGPT provided and go back and just paste that here. Oops, I'm supposed to. Okay, and then we're gonna run it. Okay, and we're gonna see if we get anything. So let's go to our Telegram group. Nope, we still don't get anything in our Telegram group. Okay, so we're not getting any errors, right? Which is good, but we're not seeing, anything. We're not seeing, what we want to see, right? So and so a good practice is often it is good to refresh, ChatGPT's memory with the code that you have because tokens are still limited, So and ChatGPT doesn't have the traditional long-term, memory per se, right? So sometimes it's just good practice, right? So we'll let you know I'm still having trouble. So I'm just gonna say the bot is not sending the message about the transaction in the group. So I'm just gonna say here's my code below. So this is good for ChatGPT to look at the code based on the problem you're having. So there's my code below. I'll send it and let's see what it's gonna tell us to do next. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for ChatGPT to send its message and then I'll read through and just make sure I follow all the steps. All right, so it looks like it is done. Okay, so first step, we want to make sure the token ID is correct. So you can check this by talking to Botfather in Telegram and using the token command. So we're gonna go back to Telegram and first check to make sure the token we got is correct. So check with Botfather. So let's go back here. Okay. So let's type token. Oops, and send. So that's the command. Choose the bot you want to generate the token for. Okay, so this is the bot we created. Okay, our only bot. Okay, so this is the token we have. So let's go back to our code. You just want to make sure that we have the right token, right? Okay. So it looks like we were getting some errors actually, but it might have been delayed. That's why we're not seeing, the response earlier. But that is fine. We'll just, follow the steps outlined by ChatGPT. So if you go back to our Telegram, we just want to make sure the token number we have is correct. Okay. So this is the token number we have, and this is what we have. Okay, looks like it is correct. So we do have the right token number. So these are good practices, right? To debug in your code and make sure, okay, everything is good. And this is something ChatGPT is really good at to make sure, you follow the right steps, to learning to debug, basically. Okay, so next step, we want to check, the chat ID to make sure it is correct. Okay. So you can get the chat ID by adding, get my bot ID to your group and sending, my ID. Okay. So we have to add members. So we have to add get my ID bot. So I'm thinking, okay, this is the one. And we're gonna add that to our group. Are you sure you want to add the get my ID to the XLM group? Show the last 100 message to get my ID. Okay, let's go ahead and add that. So your user ID, your current chat ID. So I guess that is correct. Yeah, that is correct. So okay, I guess he gives us that information, automatically. But we can also use, the command ChatGPT said just out of curiosity, right? So let's do that and see. Okay. So it gives us, both our user ID and also our chat ID. Okay, so the chat ID is correct, right? So we're just following the steps, right, to debug our code and figure out, what the problem is or why we're not getting the expected results, right? So the first two, we made sure, okay, our token ID is correct and our also chat ID is correct, right? So we want to check, the permissions to ensure the bot has the necessary permissions in a group and how to read and send. So, I mean, we just check that, right? When we added permissions, so we know, our bot, is an admin, right? So we don't, but we can double check just, for the sake of it, right? So, okay, you click here, I guess, and okay, has access to messages, right? So is an admin. So okay, so that is correct and working. So number three is good. And now we can test, the bot. So try sending a message from the bot to the group outside of the monitor transaction function to make sure the bot is working correctly. So you can do this by adding the following line to the end of your script. Okay. So if you see the bot start a message in your group, then the bot is able to send messages correctly. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to add this, I believe, to at the bottom of our code. So this is what ChatGPT, I guess this line specifically is what ChatGPT wants us to add. So let me go ahead and I'll do that. So let me try again. So we'll let ChatGPT know that we are getting, this error, this, runtime error. We're just gonna copy it and go back here. We are getting this error. So I want to give it, some information, about the change we made, right? Usually it's really good at making deductions, and guessing what could be wrong, but it sometimes helps to provide as much information as possible. This error after we added the Boda send message. Okay, so here's how you can modify your code to use async, and await. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we'll update our code with what ChatGPT told us to do. So first we're gonna import, this. I'm gonna import this at the top of our code. And so if you're ever confused or not sure what the next step is, you can. So let's do this. If you don't know where to put, what, right? You don't know what steps to take. You can just ask ChatGPT, can you update the entire code for me? If you don't know where you are, if you are confused, it is okay. Just ask ChatGPT, and it is very helpful at providing you with everything you need. So I'm just gonna copy paste everything, and I'm gonna run my code again. So let's look. Okay, so we did get the message, the bot started. So it means, okay, we can, our code is actually working, for that piece, right, of sending, message, from the bot into the Telegram group. So we actually do get this now. So that is, positive, right? So our code is working. So our next step now is we want some transaction information, right? So we'll let ChatGPT know. Okay. Excellent. We did get the bots started message in the group. Now we want to see some Mobi transactions. So the transaction from our asset that we defined, up here. Yeah, Mobi, so we want to see some transactions. So let's tell ChatGPT to do that for us. Great. Okay. Basically, what ChatGPT is telling us that it is possible that okay, maybe the reason we're not seeing any transactions in the group is that okay, maybe there's just no transactions from the Mobi asset, right? Because okay, our code is running, we're still listening on the Stellar blockchain. If there's that transaction, but in case there's no transaction, then we're not going to see anything, right? So if you're still not seeing a Mobi transaction after a while, there might be issue with the logic, right? So I think one thing we can do here, we just want to make sure that we're actually receiving data, right, from the blockchain. We're using the Stellar SDK, right? So for now, I think we can change our code, completely, right? So one thing we can do is that instead of listening from transaction for transactions, on the seller chain, we can just do some hard code and get like the last transaction. Okay, so we're gonna ask, ChatGPT to modify our code. So we're gonna change the logic of our code completely, right? So instead of listening and see if there's a transaction, we're just gonna get the last transaction and have the bot send a message about that last transaction. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do that. So we're gonna copy our code again. And one thing I want to add is that when you're using Replit, and sometimes you might make mistakes in your code, or let's say ChatGPT made a change to your code and you want an earlier version, you can always go to history, right? And in history you can go back to all the changes you've made, right? So even though, okay, we're gonna make a big change to our code, to our logic, just for testing purposes, if we want to come back to this, and go forward in this direction, then we can go back to history, and select that previous version so we can make changes to it, right? So for now, we're gonna ask ChatGPT to change the logic of our code, right? So instead of listening, on the blockchain, for transaction, we're just gonna ask it to get the last piece of transaction and then just have the bot send a message in the group. Okay, so let's go ahead and ask ChatGPT to do that. So I'm gonna change it. Tell it, let's change the logic of our code. Instead of listening for transactions, just grab transactions, the last transaction, and have the bot send it in the group. So, and I'm saying, here's our code. All right, so let's wait. So if you just want to grab the last transaction involving Mavi asset and send in the group, you can modify the monitor transaction function to stop after finding the first transaction that matches the criteria. So here's how you can do it. All right. So ChatGPT is updating our function for us. So we're just gonna wait for it to finish. Okay, with this modification, the monitor transactions function will stop after finding the first transaction that involved the Mabi asset and sending it inside, the Telegram group. Okay, so let's go ahead and just copy this. So we're just gonna update this section of our code, right? Because based on what ChatGPT has seen, that's just the piece of code we need to update, right? Again, if you're confused, you can always ask it to provide you with the entire piece of code, right? But we know, okay, we only have to change a specific piece, which is here from here, so which is here. So that's all we're gonna update. Okay, so from here up until right here. Okay, so we're just gonna update this. We're gonna run our code again. So let's see. Our code is running, and then we're gonna check, the Telegram group and see. Okay, the bot has started, but we still are not seeing anything, right? We're not seeing, anything, from that. So we are still not getting, the transaction we want. So let me rephrase, what I want ChatGPT to do. Okay. So let's say, how can I rephrase this? So let's think a little bit. Okay. So let me ask it. Okay. Get the last transaction without monitoring the without constantly, yeah, let's say constantly monitoring the chain. Just have the bot get that transaction send it and exit. Okay, and let's have it, update our code. Okay, so I'm thinking the error we're still getting might be, with the asset code, but it's okay. So maybe you were listening, and then you found the transaction, you hit this piece of code, this line and get an error, but that's okay. And this is why I'm trying to simplify the process I'm using with ChatGPT, right? Because this way, if that is the error, we'll get it right away, right? Instead of, waiting and monitoring. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna do that. So I'm gonna update. So we're gonna go from here all the way down to here. And we're gonna run our code again. Okay, so looks like it ran. Let's check our group. Nope, we still don't see anything. Let's try again. So let's run the code. So let's check our group, right? We want to check, the chat group. So we still see the bot, started message, right? But we still don't see the transaction, that we want, right? We're supposed to see this message, a transaction, we're still not seeing that, right? So let's, okay, with this modification, the function, and then exit. If the last transaction doesn't involve Mobby, the function will exit without sending a message. Okay, so it looks like, it's not seeing any transaction from Mobby, right? So let's say, so right now we just want to make sure we're seeing transactions, right? That, we're actually able to access, the blockchain and get data from the blockchain, right? So let's say, so okay, let's do this. Can we just get any transaction, not Mobby specifically? So we can update our code later on, but first step, right? We want to make sure our code is working. So we're gonna, because based on ChatGPT's explanation is that okay, the code exited, right? Because we didn't get an error, the code ran and exited without an error, which means it didn't find anything, for our specific asset, right? So what we're gonna do next is we just want any asset, right? We just want to monitor the Stellar chain and just get any data, right? So because our goal right now is to make sure we can actually get data, right, from the Stellar chain, okay? So that's all we want to do. So once we do that, then okay, we can go a little bit more in depth, and go from there, right? So let's go ahead and paste this here. Let's run our code. So it ran, it stopped. So we'll still have the bot started message, but we'll still don't have what we need. Let's run it again. So, oops, let's run it again. So we're still getting, the message that the bot has been started, but we're still not getting anything, right? From the Stellar chain. Okay. So with this ChatGPT was telling us with this modification, the monitor transaction function will get the last transaction, get the operations for that transaction, and send a message about the first payment operations if fine, regardless of the asset involved. If that transaction doesn't have any payment operation, the function will exit without sending a message. So we're still not getting, what we need, right? So one thing we can do, instead of having the bot send a message, to the chat group, can we see if we can see that, right, in our actual code? So let me just ask, okay, we are still not getting anything from the bot about transactions. So we can try a couple of things, now that I think about it. Okay. Can we try a different asset? Or is there a way we can debug this just to make sure we get data from, oops, blockchain. Okay, let's see. Okay. So ChatGPT's approach, to debugging this to make sure we're actually getting data is that instead of having that information sent, to the bot, we're just gonna display that. We're just gonna get the data from the seller chain and just, display that. So this code will print out the last transaction and its operations to the console. You can check these printouts to see if you are getting the data correctly from the Stellar blockchain. If you are not seeing any printouts, or if printouts, indicate that you are not getting the correct data, this might be an issue, right, with the SDK or the connection to the Stellar blockchain. In that case, you might need to check the Stellar documentation or contact the Stellar support for help. Okay, so let's go ahead and update our piece of code again. So we're gonna paste, oops, so right here. Okay, let's run our code. All right, so it looks like we are actually getting data from the Stellar chain, right? That's what I see here. So it does look like we're actually getting data from the Stellar chain. So I think, the problem we're having is that, okay, even though we are getting data, so that is good news, right? The data is not being sent from the bot, to the Telegram group. Okay, so that is good news, and these are some of the steps you can use to debug your code while you're working with ChatGPT. Okay, so let's all the good news. We are getting data from the Stellar chain. Can we send that data into the Telegram group? Okay, so just how you can do it. Okay, so let's see. So the first thing, we want to make sure that we can get data from the bot, sorry, from the Stellar chain, right? So now we know, yeah, we're definitely getting data from the Stellar chain. But the problem we're having is that, okay, the data wasn't being sent into the Telegram group by the bot. So we're gonna change our approach a little bit, right? So let's see. So this code will send the last transaction and its operation to the Telegram group, followed by the message about the first payment operation in fines. Okay. So let's copy this piece of code again, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna update this. Oops, right here. Okay. Ooh, that does not look good. So that does not look good at all. So we're getting a bunch of errors, right? So, but I guess it's mainly, one error in a sense, but affecting probably a bunch of files, but okay, let's go ahead and send this, to ChatGPT. So we are getting this error. So let's see what ChatGPT is gonna tell us to do. So occurs when you're trying to perform an asynchronous operation after the event loop. So to fix this, you can use a single event loop for all asynchronous operations. Here's how you can modify your code. Okay. So it's gonna update our entire code for us. And again, so I'm fairly familiar with some of these concepts, but as I mentioned before, right? So let's say if you're trying to code with AI and there's a lot you're not familiar with, right? There's a lot you don't know. You can always ask questions. ChatGPT is really good. I explaining a lot of those concepts for you, right? So, and if you get stuck, always ask questions. It is gonna help you. All right. So let's try again. Let's see. Nope, we're still getting a same error. Okay, it looks like okay, message is too long. So I wonder if the message we're getting back from the message we're trying to send, it is too long, right? But so let's send it this. So there is no current event. Oops, let me copy this. Let me let me copy this, and we're gonna send it to ChatGPT, and we'll go from there. So here we go. Another error. So let's see. Then we say you're thrown by the Telegram API when the message test exceeds, the maximum limit. Okay. So I don't know if you recall, when we sent, when we displayed, right, our message earlier, it was a lot of data, right? So as ChatGPT is telling us, the API, the Telegram API has a limit on number of characters that can be sent per transaction, per message, by a bot. And it seemed, we exceeded, that limit, right? So let's see here. Let's update our code again. So we're going from here. Oops. And here. So let's try again. Okay, so we got a warning, but now our code worked, right? So even though okay we got this warning, and we can look at that later, but we now got the expected result. So we got the last transaction ID, the operation ID, the sell offer, and the operation type. Even though okay, so that is good news. Even though we kind of shrunk down what the transaction actually is. But I think we were able to accomplish the basic step we wanted, right? So the basic step was first, we wanted to set up a Telegram bot, right? And then we wanted to be able to get data from the Stellar blockchain, and ChatGPT helped us with setting up, our Stellar API so we can communicate with the Stellar chain, and then we were able to send, data from the Stellar chain into our Telegram group. We wanted to focus on getting the basic stuff, and I think we're almost there, right? And this is what this first tutorial was meant to be. This first part of our series about setting up, this Telegram bot and making sure it's able to get data from the Stellar chain. So we were able to get this basic, aspect done. And a lot of the time, creating something like this might take a little bit longer, especially when you're dealing with third-party APIs, right? Let's say you are not familiar with, the Stellar API as a developer, you're not gonna know how it's gonna work, right? So you're gonna look into documentation, read it, understand it, and it might take a little bit longer, right? But with ChatGPT, you're able to do a lot of these things, in very, very quickly. So we're gonna stop here for now. So this is the first part. It is gonna be a series, of tutorials for this, so we can set up our bot, and add more functionalities to it, But we're able to get our basic, stuff started, and this is the goal we wanted to achieve, with this first tutorial. So you can go ahead, and I will make sure to add a link to my entire conversation with ChatGPT. So I'll make sure I add a link to that under the video, so you can go ahead and read through it, and just take a look. And if you want to check out the website, again, we have an app request section, right? So if you have ideas or things you want to build or suggestions, and you want us to create a tutorial for it, right? Go ahead and create an app request and add your app idea there, and we'll create a tutorial for it. So yeah, thank you for joining us in our second tutorial, but our very first, YouTube tutorial. So we'll definitely be doing more of these. Again, my name is Kuma with aigptcon.com, and until next time, bye.